So, last week we've discussed in the CDM Ceph ADM upgrades, Ceph ADM major upgrades. So it turns out that the algorithm to minor upgrades in Ceph ADM also works for major upgrades in Ceph ADM, minus some things that we need to do. Like, for example, turn on specific things, update client min-max compatibility versions, turn on features that require new clients, blue store on disk format changes, everything that needs to be implemented in the upgrade.py. Travis, how do you do these kind of upgrades? These kind of major upgrades in Rook? Is it all manual right now?
The upgrade of which thing in Rook? Sorry, say that one more time.
Major Ceph upgrades.
Right. So, I mean, the approach for upgrades, major upgrades. So say, right, from Nautilus to Octopus, right? It's really the same process from the user's perspective as even a patch release. You just update the version of Ceph that Rook is supposed to deploy, and then Rook is supposed to handle all of the anything that's needed during the major upgrade. Actually, we don't too often have special steps for the upgrade. We just update the individual components in order, and it seems to work pretty well. But like when we deploy Octopus, we have to run certain commands too to enable things.
Okay.
Which we have to do for new deployments anyway if it's Octopus. But in general, though, it's just kind of built into the whole upgrade process. Just set the version, and Rook is supposed to handle it.
Okay.
But
I think we
I'm
need
not sure if that answers your question. Yeah.
Yeah. It works for minor upgrades in Ceph ADM, but for major upgrades we have to do those extra steps. So. Okay. I think the path to do major upgrades in Ceph ADM is pretty clear. Joshua, do we want to discuss the planned functionality?
Yes. So I don't know if everybody has seen this this gist that I created a couple of days ago. Basically, it proposes to add a new functionality that's called plan, which should give you the return of the scheduler, basically saying that this host will receive that service based on the service specification that you fed in. Because currently actually in the last couple of weeks we got more reports that people are not kind of sure what internally and where the services end up, and that it's kind of intransparent. And we do have some kind of preview functionality for OSDs already, but OSDs are kind of different. And doing that for the rest of the services is rather easy because there are only, because the scheduler basically tells you which of the hosts that are available, and then we have to just compute which hosts get which services and which hosts get services removed. For that, I created I have a work in progress branch. This is basically aiming to create a working prototype. And I do have a working prototype, but it's not, I can't show us today because it's weird already. Still, maybe next week. Thoughts?
I was thinking of change to the scheduler a bit more.
Mm-hmm.
and I'm trying to find it. Here, it says commit here. Let's commit here. And I think the general functionality looks good.
Yeah, so that's fixed, by the way. So that is now basing off of a service specification. Well, the hash of the service specific point I was mentioning here. But yeah, anyways, go ahead.
One thing that I don't know is that we will always have some kind of intransparent part of the scheduler. Especially if we really go into resource-aware scheduling and scheduling based on existing occupied pods, stuff like that. So it's getting ever more complicated step by step. And I wonder if we really should aim for a 100% solution, like, for example, this service will be deployed on those specific hosts, or should we just be okay with it will deploy, I don't know, 2 daemons on those hosts, basically, like just give a rough estimate of where services are going to get deployed instead of exactly telling people what is going to happen.
I mean, we can just be somewhat accurate, right? Because this planning, previewing, or whatever is always for this very moment. Currently, the likelihood that the cluster changes is, well, without the administrator knowing, is very little, right? So, and therefore we can really say, so the planning that you did like 10 seconds ago is like the 99% accurate to what the outcome would look like when you do the apply seconds later, right? In a bigger, let's say 100, 200 node cluster, this is definitely a different story, because there can be, drives where disks are being replaced left and right. There is new nodes popping up and environments change, and maybe even if the environment is hyperconverged, things will definitely change. But until that happens, and until we have a resource-aware scheduler that really changes its outcome on small parameters, this approach is more than fine. And yeah. And right now we can be really precise with just small adaptations. So one adaptation is as you just posted the link, making the host selection in the scheduler kind of predictive by using the same random seed. And that's a very small thing to do. And this gives us, a deterministic scheduler, which is important for it. Because if you don't do this, you will plan something and then you will get a different seed once you execute it. And then, the planning is inaccurate.
Can we, what about making the plan independent of the seed?
Well, the plan is independent of the seed. It's just, so I don't actually know if the seed will be refreshed when you restart the manager, or if the module gets reloaded, and that will probably happen if you issue a CLI command. That I don't know, but why don't we just keep a consistency? This is not about being, accurately random. This is about, getting something out of a list, and then which is not alphabetically. And that's, the whole point. random is probably even overkill here for the entire thing. We only used random. We wanted to avoid to always pick the first items out of the list. That's the whole point.
I mean, if you don't give it a placement restriction, then it will use all hosts as the base for the
Yes.
scheduling, right?
Yes.
And then choosing not always the first host is really important.
Yes, and that behavior still remains, right?
But one problem that I'm seeing is that the current scheduler is really on the edge of being too simple to be usable.
Yeah.
And if we now build functionality that depends on the scheduler being extremely, I don't know.
I have a comment in there in my VIP branch saying that a resource-aware scheduler is probably already a new scheduler and not even the simple scheduler anymore, because we have code that looks into the daemons and then decides based on if the host already has daemons, it will then remove or add new daemons to that host, right? And that's not happening in the scheduler.
No, it is happening in
My
the scheduler.
opinion, no.
So the actual removal part is not happening in the scheduler, but the
Right,
scheduler
but
takes existing daemons into consideration.
Yeah, but not in the actual scheduler implementation. Anyways, so before we started to look into taking existing daemons into account, we already had the simple scheduler, and maybe it's time to create a new one that is a bit more resource aware than the first one. And yeah. But anyways, I mean, the whole thing is completely independent of apply, list, or whatever. It's its own code path that just uses our existing implementation of the scheduler and returns the output of it.
Which is, I think,
user,
in general, a good idea.
Right. And I mean, of course, formatting needs to happen for end users, but it's really just that, right?
Yeah.
And
it's some kind of dry run.
Yes.
Okay. I'm looking forward to a pull request.
Yeah, I mean, probably by next week I will have something that is actually presentable, and then I can show it, and then we can discuss it a bit more.
Okay.
Yeah. The only thing that I wanted to mention here is that we should have a way to uniquely identify specifications. For example, because currently we don't enforce service ID to be set, that means that you can apply two service specifications for, let's say, OSDs that have no placement and that have only the key service type. And so they look identical, and they are both being stored on the monstore, and then we have a conflict. So either we should enforce service ID, or we do internal tracking of whatever IDs.
The enforcement of service ID needs to be it needs to be service type base. Like for example, for managers, we don't name the service. It's just called manager.
for those kind of services, it's probably fine because you shouldn't have more than two anyways, more than one anyways.
Yeah.
But there is valid use case for, I think, RGW, OSDs, probably NFS, iSCSI. So for of those, you can have multiple. And currently, we do not enforce service ID. That makes it really hard to track.
Yeah, we should make that mandatory.
Okay.
One question, Joshua.
Yes.
Because I don't understand very well why do we need a new command keyword plan in order to do this, okay? Because basically I think that we can do the same. I think we must do the right thing using the apply command. So I don't understand very well why do we need this new command keyword.
So the main issue that at least I have is that if you say apply, then you basically want to apply something to your cluster, right? And then of course you can set a flag that says -- plan or -- preview or something like this. But you do not only want to get a preview or a plan of newly applied specs, but you also want to have the possibility to preview specs that have already been applied to your cluster. And there, the apply command just doesn't make any sense. Because you're not applying something because it is already applied. You want to get a plan of Ceph ADM or a preview or a dry run of whatever of a service specification or of the outcome of the service specification. So therefore, reusing apply just doesn't make sense.
Okay, so in this case, what we need is just a description of the service.
Or the name of the already applied service.
Yes. So this is something, it could be, imagine that, for example, any kind of service is an object, okay? And if we have just a method in this object in order to provide the description, the complete description of this service, is the same.
Not sure if I follow.
What maybe I don't understand, but what you are telling is that with the plan keyword, what you are going to see is how is deployed the service in this moment, in which host, and in labels applied to the host, and even attributes of the service that are applied in this moment. So what we really want is just to know what is the current state of one running service in our cluster.
Not the running. What is so? Let's take an example. So you want to get two new MDS services running, right?
Yeah.
So those are not running. You have a cluster, a bare minimum, and then you want to get like two MDSs. So what you would do usually or currently with Ceph ADM is you set up your YAML file, your specification YAML file, put all the information in it, right?
Yeah.
And then people had problems identifying of what Ceph ADM would do when they apply this specification. And then they anticipate that MDSs will be spawned on node 1 and node 2, but due to whatever reason, it was not the case. So I think it's a good idea to give them the possibility to have a command to feed in the YAML specification and then return the command will return you what would happen if you would have applied it, but you're actually not applying it, right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes. But in any case, I think that it is going to be difficult to understand, because what we are using in order to set up new services, for example, this MDS, is an apply command. If we add just a new parameter in the apply command, for example, preview, we can obtain the same result, the same functionality, and I think that it's not needed to add a new important keyword command, okay, like plan, to the set of commands that we have in this moment. So I think that it's probably more easy to understand that if we are using the apply command in order to do certain kind of things, and I want to know what is going to happen if in this moment I use this command, it's more easy to understand that just adding a minus minus preview, for example, is more easy to understand that to have to use another completely different command in order to see what is going to happen with other command.
I get that, right? But the thing is that when you use plan or preview or whatever that's called in the future, you are not always interested in what will happen if you apply a new set of specifications. There is also the possibility to ask the cluster what will happen to existing specifications. And then you would need to write things like Ceph or apply and then serve whatever, right? And then you have to do this preview. But at that point, you're no longer applying anything.
Yeah.
So this verb doesn't make sense anymore, right? And therefore, I introduced a new one that actually makes it clear what this thing does.
I mean, we don't need to generate a plan for a server that is already there without modifying it, because you can just do servers Ceph or PS, right?
Yeah, but that gives you only the. But if you disabled automatic deployment by the scheduler, by Ceph ADM, there are pending changes, and if you query the state within this 6 minute of serve not being executed, you will have potential changes that are executed once the serve thread runs again. And so initially this querying something that has already was very useful for OSDs, because with OSDs you will want to see what is going to happen when you redeploy something, because that's how OSD redeployment works. So replacements, that's word they were looking for.
Okay. In any case, let me insist. Okay. The only thing that I don't like is just the new keyword plan. Okay. It seems like a new command. Okay. But I think that the same functionality can be included in the apply commands that we have with a new parameter. Okay. And if we use this new parameter, for example, minus minus review, what we should do, what we must do, is to present all the information that we have. For example, in the case of OSDs, all the OSDs that were previously created, okay, plus the new OSDs that are going to create it using the drive group that you are using in the command directory. Even in the output, we can mark especially or to outline what OSDs are going to be created new. Okay, so I think that.
But that's already beyond. That's user experience and user interfaces, right? So that's not even discussed. We can display whatever information we want, right?
Yeah. Yes, but you understand my point of view. I think that is a good idea, and really we need to provide this information to the final user. I think that is very useful. Okay, but I think that is going to be very strange to use a different command, the plan command, in order to see this information instead of using just a parameter like preview in the command that you are usually to use for doing this action.
Okay. Although my problem is just that the command does not make any sense if this is applied to already existing service specifications. That's my only problem. I mean, but if the majority also is against adding a new subcommand, I'm also totally fine.
Well, it's my point of view.
Yeah. I would also be in favor of keeping it using the apply command, but by taking into the consideration that that calling Ceph also apply with service name only doesn't really make much sense. Anyway, let's discuss it further. Maybe if we have a pull request, it's going to get a bit clearer.
Yep.
Patrick, are you? Yes.
Yeah. Sorry, I was a little bit absent.
We have a next item on the list. That's monitoring the container versions used. Who added that point?
So is it about the versions I added to Ceph ADM already? Is it about Pacific and Octopus, just Pacific or Octopus? Or a general discussion which versions we want to ship about the monitoring stack? Because
we have a new item. We have an item on the agenda today that's called monitoring stack, container versions used. That there is something with a pull request, and then also need hard-coded versions in Ceph ADM. Probably it will be nice to have a spec file for each service daemon.
Yes.
That's you, Jean-Miguel?
Yes, I have write this, okay? And this is because, well, I have seen, this is a pull request from Patrick, okay? That I think that he tried to solve the problem, okay, in order to use specific versions for the monitoring stack containers. But, well, in any case, I think that what happened if you use the bootstrap command? It seems that the versions that are going to be used are the one that we have hard-coded in the Ceph ADM file. And this is the latest version for all the monitoring containers. So my first question is that what happens if I want to deploy directly the monitoring stack using the bootstrap command? The modifications that Patrick did, I think that are not going to be applied.
Not sure about the bootstrap command, but in general, this is just those are just default values, and they're not. Those are not the latest versions of the software available. I mean, might be the case for now because we've pinned the versions to be fixed by now, with the exception of Ceph Grafana, but we're working on that too. So that the latest version at some point will not be installed anymore, but only the versions we have tested. And this is those are the versions of the versions of the containers that are used by default. But there's so the pull request mentioned is also the implementation of configuration options for those containers, where you can specify any container you want to use for deployment.
Okay. I think that Sebastian has put the line probably where the version of the container is pinned in Ceph Manager. Yes, this is what I mean. Okay, that probably we will need to modify that. Okay, but the important thing is not to hard code the information in the code. Okay, I think that this is an error. Okay, and I think that what we really need is just spec files for all the services, for all the daemons that we are using, and to have the possibility of the user to define in the spec file the different attributes or properties that the user wants to be applied in that service. For example, ports for example, in dashboard, it could be if we want to use SSL or not, the port that we want to use, if we want to use any of the options that we have in the bootstrap command, for example, to define the user that I want to use, to define if I want to skip to reference the admin password, these kind of things. And I think that we really need to add spec files and user modifiable spec files for all the services that we have. Okay, so I think that in this moment we need to change. I think that is the more quick fix is just to modify the lines of the code in order to use just the versions that we know that are working. Okay, because has been tested. Okay, and start to work in order to provide the possibility to make this kind of changes very easy for the final user. Okay, so
may I ask a question? I heard, and I might have understood that it's about not having those fixed versions in the code. Okay, but
yes, sure.
Is it about so just as as a cleanup to have them elsewhere, or is it to enable the user to use a certain configuration file and apply that instead of what we provide? Because I think that those versions are our recommendations, and the user should. He can change that, but I hope in most cases he won't, and he won't need to. That's my hope, at least.
Yeah, we need to provide proper defaults. We need to provide proper defaults that actually work. And we have to make sure that if users don't change the default, then what the user is getting actually works. On the other hand, if you are using the apply spec command that Daniel created, or if you don't disable monitoring, you still need to be able to use a different Prometheus container image or Grafana container monitoring container images, because that's not really possible right now, right? If you bootstrap and do not disable the deployment of monitoring, then a user basically doesn't have a chance to modify the container image before it is applied on the local host. Is that what you have in mind, Miguel?
Yes. And apart that, we should start to work in order to separate codification from configuration. Okay, configuration should be completely a part of the code and in different files, and these files should be final user should be able to modify and to adjust these configuration files. That is the normal way to do the things, I think. And even in the case that we know that there is only certain, for example, versions of the monitoring stack containers that are working, for example, it is possible that in downstream, in SUSE, you decide to use a different version, but in Red Hat, maybe we can use another different version, okay? And this is possible if we are using configuration files. So it's important to start to make this split of configuration and codification.
So I think there are some. I think there are some things we can differentiate between the configuration of the Ceph cluster is one thing, and how the user is capable to configure what is being bootstrapped in another configuration file is another thing. Because the user could very well say at the point where he has not yet deployed any monitoring that he wants to use different images. That makes sense to me. But those configuration options that do now exist in Ceph ADM that enable to use different images are the basis for that. We need them anyway. And the fixed versions in the code is something that the user should never touch. This is just for developers. I mean, yes, of course, we could have the versions in a separate file or so, but still, that would be something the user is not supposed to touch. Because those are just the defaults we provide for its sane setup. Something we have tested and know that works.
Okay. In this case, about the versions.
Can we simply remove the constant current latest lines in Ceph ADM itself, like for example line 116? I mean, the defaults are now located in the Ceph ADM Manager module and no longer in Ceph ADM. Can we simply remove it?
Depends on the test. The tests we currently have for source Ceph ADM, but if there's a test that needs to be adapted or removed, yes, we could. Basically, the Ceph ADM Manager module just always specifies which image is to be used when deploying monitoring components. Yeah, this is just a fallback for the case the manager module for Ceph ADM would not be used, but maybe the source Ceph ADM script is used manually or is tested in an automated fashion.
Yeah, but still, then it's more error prone to then use current latest, right? And instead of raising an exception.
Well, Ceph ADM is very narrow in its purpose. If it's just about testing, if it deploys any container, but it does not test how those configurations are deployed and how those containers work together, then it doesn't matter much. But I see the point that it might be confusing to have also some fixed versions in there.
Yeah, I think it's about confusion, preventing any confusion. That would relieve us from the pain of having a configuration file for Ceph ADM. Just because I really want to avoid it. I really want to avoid a configuration file for Ceph ADM.
And the configuration file is just a set, it's just joining different spec files. I am asking you, Sebastian, the configuration file for Ceph ADM, it will be just a join several spec files.
I mean, we have the cluster YAML from Daniel, right?
Yeah.
That's a set of or a list of server specifications, right? And that should be enough. Having another configuration file for Ceph ADM itself, no, please don't.
Yeah.
The reason is, for example, if you have a dedicated version of the manager, then we can put all configuration values into the manager module configuration, because the manager is invoking Ceph ADM, right? And if you try to have another set of configuration values just for Ceph ADM on the host, it will, I don't know, it's going to be complicated. And
Okay.
to this day, Ceph ADM is completely stateless. It just does stuff without looking into any configuration values, right? Because everything is passed on standard in or via parameters. Let's keep Ceph ADM itself simple from an architectural point of view. Like for example, removing default on Ceph ADM really makes sense, right? Because then we don't need to care about them.
Okay. And how do you get the default value for this version?
From the manager module.
So you need to bootstrap the cluster, and once you have the manager, get this information from the manager.
That's already the case. If you look into how the Bootstrap deploys the monitoring, that's one moment. How does there's the flag for it? It's
Don't worry. Just tell me that. Don't search the exact line where this happens. Okay, I believe you.
Don't skip monitoring stack. There is skip monitoring stack. Skip monitoring stack. Okay, this is how. So Miguel, this is how Ceph ADM, the Ceph ADM binary deploys the monitoring stack. Everything goes through the manager module. Ceph ADM itself doesn't deploy anything, except for the initial manager and the initial monitor.
Okay. Okay, understand. So the easy way is to remove where these constants are being used. Are being used.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And in this way, the thing that the modification that Patrick did, it has more sense. Okay. Understood.
Okay.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Travis, drive groups.
I think that he has dropped. Maybe.
Travis.
I need to drop.
It's gone.
Talk to you later. Too much time.
Oh. Anyway, let's move that to the mailing list or the chat. Maybe we can discuss it without Travis. There was a mailing discussion regarding making drive groups work for Rook, and Travis' idea was to write a function that takes the placement specification and returns a Kubernetes kind of placement specification using node affinities, etc. And I like it. And we need it anyway. That's what I said in the mail. Placement. Here. That's this tracker issue here. 44875. So if you have any thoughts about that issue, then please do. Please add any comments. Any thoughts? Any ideas? Any other topics? Perfect. Then enjoy the week and see you either tomorrow or next week.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.